What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today's video I've been really excited to bring you because I've had this shoe for a while, I have put some volume in it, and now I am ready to give you my opinion, to tell you all about it. Guys, today we are looking at the Adidas Evo SL. Let's get into it. Now, of course, let's get the ball rolling with a couple of disclosures. Adidas was good enough to send me this pair of the Evo SL for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, when they go on sale, you're going to be able to pick up a pair of the Adidas ADIZERO EVO SL for $150. And of course, I'll place a link in the show notes below in case you want to pick up a pair for yourself. So why don't we get the ball rolling as we usually do with some specs? And we'll start off with the stack height. The Adidas Evo SL has 38.5 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for a 6.5mm drop. Now, if that isn't right in the sweet spot of drops, I don't know what is. And guys, let me just say this right off the bat because you're probably going to be picking up on some positive vibes coming from me to you about this shoe. And I'll be straight up with you. I really like the Evo SL, but you know, I mean, it's not perfect. There are a couple things that I'd like to see them change in the next version, but it's pretty close to perfect. But anyway, Adidas claims that in a US men's size 9, the Evo SL will tip the scale at 7.9 ounces or 224 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it tips the scale at 10 ounces even or 283 grams. Now, of course, in my size, anything under 300 grams, I think of as pretty light. But what about the competition? What would I compare the Evo SL to if I were also shopping for some other shoes? And there's actually quite a few. I think one we have to consider is the New Balance Rebel V4. Now, the Rebel V4 will only cost you $140, so it's $10 less than the Evo SL. We have 30 in the heel, 24 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop. And in my size, it weighs in at 9.1 ounces or 254 grams. So it's also a little lighter than the Evo SL. Next up, I think the Brooks Hyperion 2. Now guys, the Brooks Hyperion 2 will also only cost $140. And here we have a little less stack height. We have 30 in the heel, 22 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. And in my size, it tips the scale at 8.5 ounces or 241 grams. So it actually weighs 41 grams less than the Evo SL. Next up, let's take a look at the Hoka Mark 6. Guys, again, $140 against the Evo SL's $150. Now, the Hoka Mark 6 has 37 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot for a 5mm drop. And in my size, it weighs in at 9.9 ounces or 282 grams, which is 1 gram less than my size of the Evo SL. And then finally, I also want to compare it to the Topo Spectre 2. Now, the Topo Spectre 2 costs $165. We have a stack of 37, 32 for a 5mm drop. And in my size, it weighs in at 10.1 ounces or 285 grams, which is 2 grams more than my size in the Evo SL. Now, if I'm totally honest, I think the Topo Spectre 2 is probably the most comparable to the Evo SL because Topo is using a full slab of Pebax midsole. So we're getting that non-plated premium midsole goodness. Now, it costs $15 more, but I think it's probably the most comparable. Let me just get rid of this. Because all those other shoes that I shared with you as comparables for the Evo SL, I also use them as comparables for the Adidas SL2. All right, so is that really fair? I don't know. All those other shoes that I shared with you were $140 and the SL2 was $130. This is $150, so that kind of threads the needle between the two shoes. But I have to say, I probably think that those other shoes that I shared with you are more comparable to the SL2 than they are to the Evo SL. And that's because Adidas has really made something premium with the Evo SL, or at least they've brought premium down to the consumer level. Because obviously, look, if you see the styling, you know that this thing is based on the Evo Pro 1, right? But not a lot of us are going to be buying that $500 running shoe. And of course, the Adidas Pro 4 also has the same design characteristics, like totally smooth white with the 3 stripes running from the upper all the way down to the midsole. So Adidas is linking these shoes together, you know, the Evo Pro 1, the Adidas Pro 4, and now the Evo SL. Except with the Evo SL, they've made it more friendly. They've made it more likely to be used in a daily situation. And while I would probably describe the Evo SL as an up-tempo daily trainer, you know, a non-plated up-tempo daily trainer, guys, I gotta say that for $150, I think this would be a pretty good option as just your daily trainer. Now, we'll talk more about ride when we get to that section, but let's talk about some of the materials because I want to talk about this heel collar right here, and Adidas has made it very user-friendly. Like, there's plenty of padding around this heel collar. Although there's not a lot. It doesn't have that daily trainer level of padding around the heel collar, but it's enough to get the job done. It's enough that when you put your foot in, it's going to be very comfortable, and no one's going to be complaining about heel collar comfort in the Evo SL. They've done well. They've also added a very rigid heel counter, which I don't know about you, but I like it. I like that in a training shoe. In fact, I like a heel counter in my racing shoes, but a lot of companies tend to do away with it in their racing shoes. You know what I mean? It does get a bit floppy. In fact, hold on, let me just reach back. I do have a pair of the Adidas Pro 4s right here, and And look at this, yeah, you can see the difference. Like there's almost no reinforcement in this heel of the Adios Pro 4. And because we've added a sturdy heel counter to the Evo SL, we're basically going to be eliminating any heel slip that we might get. And look, some of you may not experience any heel slip when you don't have a heel counter, but I know that at least some of you do. For me, it doesn't really become an issue when I don't have a heel counter, but it does feel just a little looser. And I'm willing to put up with that on race day for that lighter, faster feeling that you get from a race day shoe. But for training, I don't want to deal with it. So I'm glad that they've got a solid heel counter in the Evo SL. For the upper, Adidas describes it as a synthetic and textile upper. I mean, it's an engineered mesh, but it's a super nice engineered mesh. It's very light, very breathable. I need to just talk positive all the time about this shoe. So here's something that you may not like. The Adidas Evo SL is so breathable that if you live in a cold climate, I bet your toes are going to get a bit cold up here up front, you know, if you're running in super low temperatures. I mean, luckily for me, I live in Florida and things never really get that cold. But on the other end of the spectrum, when things are really hot, I'm going to really enjoy having this lightweight upper. The tongue on the Evo SL it's super thin. It's almost like they put a race day tongue into a training shoe. So it's very light. There is enough padding where I didn't get any lace bite across the top of my foot, but the tongue is not gusseted. Now there is this big lace loop that covers two laces on the front. You can see it just says ADIZERO right there. But again, the tongue is not gusseted. And here's the issue with a race day tongue that is not gusseted. And that is that it's very thin. So you have to make sure your foot is seated right in the Evo SL. And if you have any experience with the Adios Pro 3, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that tongue is so light and wispy on the sides that sometimes it can bunch up under the sides of your foot. Is that really a problem? For me, no. As long as I make sure that my foot is seated right and the tongue is wrapped around my foot, I didn't experience that tongue wrapping up after the fact. But let's say you're in a hurry, you put your foot in and it kind of bends up and doubles up on your foot, you might get a hot spot. I could see that happening, but for me, it didn't. I don't know, next year in the Evo SL2, I'd probably like to see a gusseted tongue, but honestly, for performance, not really a big deal. For overlays, obviously, I mean, these are the biggest standout feature of the entire shoe. We've got the 3 stripes that go from the eyelet chain all the way down to the midsole. Got an underlay coming around the toe box just to keep that upper off your foot. We have the standard reinforcements coming right along the eyelet chain, and then there is just a little more reinforcement right along the heel. A couple of overlays on both sides, and of course that internal heel counter again. We do have the extra hole in case you wanted to do the lace lock method, but as I have explained ad nauseum, I didn't have any heel slip in this shoe, so I didn't actually test that out. Oh, for those that this matters to, there is no heel pull on the Evo SL. Again, probably not such a big deal when you have a shoe with a solid heel counter because your foot's able to just slide right in with no issue. So again, that's not really a problem. But let's come down to the midsole because I think this is the banner feature of the Evo SL. The Evo SL is using a full slab of Light Strike Pro. Now we all know that Adidas kind of mixes up their formulations of Light Strike Pro depending on what shoe they're putting it in, but the Light Strike Pro in the Evo SL is the same formulation as used in the Adios Pro 3. So that's a pretty snappy formulation, right? I mean, I ran the Berlin Marathon in the Adios Pro 3 and things worked out pretty well for me. Now again, this is not plated, so you're not going to have that propulsion of the carbon fiber rods, but it's still a pretty fun and responsive foam. Okay, let's just come down to the outsole. We can see we have a good amount of continental rubber here on the forefoot, and we have these 2 little pieces of rubber here on the lateral and medial sides of the heel. And look, even though this continental rubber is quite smooth. I mean, it's very smooth. I have run in the rain several times in the Evo SL. I didn't experience any issues with grip. And as far as wear goes, I mean, it's really standing up pretty good. I tell you, my biggest complaint is nothing that's going to interest you guys, but you see the discoloration of this exposed Light Strike Pro foam? You know, when I got this shoe, it was so beautiful and white and new. It just looked so fresh and clean. And then one run and it's totally discolored. In fact, for me at least, that was the biggest problem about running in the shoe. I just think it looks so sharp that I wanted to keep it fresh and new, but that's not what it's made for. Okay, let's talk about the ride, because I think the ride is why you are actually going to be thinking about buying this shoe. You are going to be looking for it to give something back to you. And I can tell you, at least, I can't tell you, I'm going to give you my opinion. But my opinion is that you're going to be pretty happy with this shoe. The Evo SL is comfortable, it's responsive, and it's got a big enough stack where it could handle the marathon. So if you are someone that doesn't want to buy a specific shoe for race day, you want to train in a shoe, you want to race in a shoe, I think the Evo SL is something that you could look at. Now remember, it's non-plated, so perhaps if you like that additional propulsion, or at least feeling of propulsion that a plate gives you, you might want to look elsewhere, maybe to the Boston 12. But I actually like how the Evo SL rides much more than the Boston 12. I've already said this is good for all speeds, but I just want to reiterate that I have taken the Evo SL out on many easy runs. I've taken it out on intervals and I've run tempo runs in it. And it really is a solid all-rounder. The aesthetic, again, I think it's a sharp shoe. What do you think? Drop a comment and let me know if you like how it looks, or better yet, if you don't like how it looks. I'd love to hear a different opinion. Oh, I knew there was one more thing I wanted to tell you, and that is Adidas has made the rocker point 60% from the heel. Okay, so that's probably about there. And that's where the toe spring starts, and then it comes up. Now that is the same rocker point percentage that they're using in the Evo Pro 1 and the Adios Pro 4. Now, I want to say the Adios Pro 3 had its rocker point at 70%, so just a little further forward. But by moving the rocker point back to 60%, the Evo SL and the other shoes, Adios Pro 4, Evo Pro 1, are going to be a little more aggressive. Now, maybe that's a good thing for you, maybe it's not. But I still found it to be very comfortable and very kind of quick to run it. By quick, I mean like it's very easy to get a good turnover in the Evo SL. Now look, I know a lot of people sometimes say that I am too positive with my shoe reviews. And a lot of the times I feel like I'm able to argue that there are certain parts of certain shoes that I don't always like. I gotta be right up front and tell you, there's not much about this shoe that I don't like. I think Adidas is going to sell an absolute boatload of these. So when they go on sale, I'd recommend don't think, just buy. Remember, you can always return it, but I'll be honest, you're not going to be returning it. Anyway, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the Adidas ADIZERO EVO SL. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.